You're listening to The Sustainable Angler, and my daddy is the host.
All right, well, special thanks to my sweetheart for the introduction, and welcome to The Sustainable Angler, the podcast where we discuss the intersection of fishing, conservation, and sustainability. I'm your host, Rick Crawford. This is a special episode of The Sustainable Angler because Thanksgiving is tomorrow, and I've been reflecting on what I'm most grateful for this year. Nature is right at the top of that list. Over the past year, I've been inspired by books like Braiding Sweetgrass by Kimmerer and Carbon by Paul Hawken. And my wife and I have made a point to get our kids outside, camping, hiking, fishing, and surfing. Experiencing the healing power of nature has made me even more concerned about what's happening to America's public lands, and even more proud that Emerger Strategies is a member of the Conservation Alliance, which helps protect them. That's why I'm thrilled to share my conversation with Paul Hendricks, Executive Director of the Conservation Alliance. We talked through his sustainability career at Patagonia and Rivian, the history and impact of the Conservation Alliance, and the incredible work they're doing to defend public lands. We dive into the Brands for Public Lands Coalition, now more than 150 companies strong, the importance of the Roadless Rule, and the ecological benefits of removing the Snake River dams. We also discuss why every brand needs a nature strategy, how being a 1% for the Planet member and making the Conservation Alliance one of your environmental partners is a force multiplier for conservation, and what gives Paul hope for the future. And before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm truly grateful that you take the time to listen to this podcast. I hope these conversations inspire you to take action for nature. If you're enjoying the show, a quick, free way to support it is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is also airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, OWN Radio, 96.3 FM. This episode of The Sustainable Angler is brought to you by Emerger Strategies and A New Earth Project, the sustainability initiative of Atlantic Packaging. Fly fishing taught me that learning to read a river for trout isn't just about finding fish. It's about understanding an entire ecosystem. At Emerger Strategies, we see this as a perfect metaphor for systems thinking. Each element of the river, from water quality and habitat to the aquatic insects that transform from emergers to adult mayflies, plays a crucial role. And we understand that businesses also play a critical role in the health of the planet. Measuring and improving your company's sustainability performance is the same as protecting your home waters. And responsible business practices ensure that our rivers remain clean, habitats are preserved, and biodiversity thrives for generations to come. Because when you protect what you love, you're not just protecting the planet, you're building a brand that stands for something. At Emerger Strategies, we help your business apply this holistic approach. By integrating sustainability, you not only conserve natural resources, but also create a thriving ecosystem for your business and the planet that you love. Visit our website at emergerstrategies.com to learn more, and let's protect what we love together.
We set out with a New Earth project to really start a movement.
It's a global coalition of people who are deeply concerned and want to accelerate the transition away from problematic packaging to more sustainable solutions.
Our entire value proposition was built on helping companies package things better. We were doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. We just called it packaging optimization. And packaging optimization really is about using less. And we built our whole business on that. You know, people send us their products, their goods, and we help them design packaging systems and solutions for the least possible cost, utilizing the least amount of material. Use less is always the right answer.
And that's what I see with companies like a New Earth Project, is it's like, we're just trying to create solutions for big companies and small, that makes it easier for them, cheaper for them, whatever it is, and then has less impact. Not just trying to tell people you should have less impact and making the choice forced on them. Like, make it better for everybody, and it'll make it better for the whole world.
We see the problem, and we are with you.
Thanks for having me, Rick. And I know you've been an active member of TCA for a while now. We're excited to work with you tactically on a lot of advocacy stuff, but it's awesome to be on the podcast this morning.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. Yeah, Paul, I wanted to get things kicked off by diving a little bit into your background. How did you end up getting involved with conservation and Conservation Alliance, and what was your sort of journey to leading the Conservation Alliance like?
Yeah. Oh man, it's like a winding river how I ended up here, or a bunch of switchbacks overall. I don't know if it's because I could never make up my mind, or if I just took a while to find my actual passion, which I think I've found now. But so I grew up in Michigan, up in northern Michigan, and had an amazing, fortunate upbringing where we were on the kind of in our backyard was National Lakeshore, National Forest, and my parents were big in terms of pulling us outside. Like, we didn't have video games as growing up, but just an amazing experience in kind of childhood of roaming the woods, roaming the rivers. My dad was a huge angler. We were more northern Michigan. It was like northern pike, walleye, bass, that type of stuff. And so just, fell in love with flora and fauna. But I kind of, it's funny, I never realized how much of a root that had in terms of who I am as a person and also my vocation going forward. So I went to undergrad. I studied business, Spanish, and education. I was going to go teach kids how to learn Spanish, but I didn't. Then I got into that and was like, I don't actually think I find my passion in conjugating verbs. And so I took a pause and said, I love working with youth, especially inspiring them to, reach their full potential and get out there. And, I grew up in Michigan, which in an amazing community, which is how I learned to work with kids, and you could work with youth, was largely through the church or kind of parachurch organizations. And so I went to seminary, which is, not anything that I do right now. But I went to seminary to study, kind of like youth ministry and all that. And I loved working with kids, but I got partway through that educational experience and had a little bit of a collapse of a faith construct, and, just really struggling to reconcile maybe what I was studying versus what I was seeing. I was out in LA at the time, and I was working at a homeless shelter. I was also working at Patagonia. And so I saw, people who were just doing direct action, making the world a better place right now. And, broad brush, and I don't want to put any labels on anything, but, for me, it was like, that's actually what I really want to do with my life, is actually just get into the weeds, get into the work, get into the day-to-day in terms of trying to make this world a better place. And so I kind of, pulled back a little bit, and had that opportunity to say, what do I really care about? What is really going to pull me forward? And that's where I can really point back to my childhood, growing up in northern Michigan, around lakes and in the waters and in the forests, and say, these places which provide so much value to so many people, this is what I want to do. I want to protect these places. And, I had Yvon Chouinard's writings in my mind too, working at Patagonia and all that. And I'm like, this is it. So I pivoted. I went to work for a nonprofit based in Boulder, Colorado, that was doing environmental justice work. And then they had an amazing opportunity to go work for Patagonia for almost a decade, running a lot of their environmental initiatives. And, what an amazing place to be, and what an amazing group of people to be around in terms of how do you how do you think about the world? How do you think about making the world a better place? And in particular, how do you think about using business as a force for good rather than, kind of a force for ruin? And so had an amazing time at Patagonia, loved that. And then I got a call from the folks at Rivian, the electric car maker, and said, hey, we're looking for someone to help lead our climate work. Would you want to come over? And leaving Patagonia, I was talking to a good buddy a couple weeks ago about this too. Is like leaving Patagonia is probably one of the hardest decisions of my life. Marrying my wife was the easiest decision in my life. Leaving Patagonia was one of the hardest because it's such a great place. But eventually, I kind of realized that they're always going to do the right thing, and for me, it was an opportunity to say, how can I amplify my impact here? So I went to work for Rivian for a handful of years. Ran their climate work, ran their advocacy and grant making. And then ultimately after that, I moved over to the Conservation Alliance, which, our core mission is really to harness the power of business to protect nature and wild spaces in North America. And it's really using the power of business to drive significant change from the protection of so many of our natural resources here in North America. And they just seemed like a perfect fit. I had my first lobbying trip to DC at Patagonia was with Conservation Alliance. We were members. I was members at Rivian. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up here. And I'm about a year into this gig and still feeling like I have total imposter syndrome. So,
Well, don't, because you're doing such a great job with such an awesome organization in the Conservation Alliance, and I a couple of things that you said I think are really important and very relatable for me personally. I grew up running around and my neighborhood wasn't really developed, and so I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, or I guess there was just acres that weren't developed that were near marsh and stuff. And so you grow up running around, and I've had this similar thing happen where I'm like looking back, I'm like, well, that was really like formative. Like, I mean, I like remember vividly spending so much time out just in nature, and like the influence that it's had on me is at the time I didn't realize it, but it's been huge. And then so I love that one of the reasons that Emerger Strategies became a Conservation Alliance member was part of that, of understanding that nature is certainly worth protecting. And I'm curious, how did the Conservation Alliance? What was the reason behind its formation? Is it something of saying, hey, we need to protect as much of this as we can, right? I mean, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Conservation Alliance were over 35 years old, and it was started by Patagonia, REI, Kelty, and the North Face, who got together, and for them, all those companies still have altruistic missions, right? Like they are in business to protect land and water, to protect flora and fauna. But they also recognize that the future of the businesses, the future of the outdoor economy was bleak and actually doesn't exist if we didn't have landscapes to go use products on, to recreate, to co-locate corporate headquarters next to, so you could attract top talent who wants to go outside on their lunch breaks or on the weekends. And so they came together, and I think it was a very business forward initial foray into it to say, businesses have an outsized opportunity to make an impact right now. B, the future of our economy doesn't exist if we don't have, healthy lands and waters. So how do we do a little bit more as an industry to come together and protect one of our most valuable assets? All other industries do that for their kind of assets, and we can have a lot of conversation what those assets are and their value. But for the outdoor economy, which is where TCA started, it was landscapes, it was flora, fauna, and everything. So they get together, pulled money together. For a long time was just a grant making organization. So the money went out the door, but we've also continued to build up what we call our advocacy program. So we kind of have two ways of working. Is that membership dues that come in, we kind of act as like I would say like a mutual fund manager where we say, what are the most important things we should be working on across the US as an industry and as an organization? And we funnel money into grassroots organizations that are doing great work. And I'm sure we'll talk about a couple of those later on here in the podcast. But then we elevate the voice of businesses to say, hey, y'all bring economic rationale for protecting places. You have an outsized influence right now. How do we bring that voice to DC to say there is a different future for our public lands and waters than what we see in the extractive in boom and bust cycle? There is a long-term positive, sustainable economy that can be built around outdoor recreation, and we're going to push that narrative forward. So, that's how it started. And I think, going back to your comment on both of us had amazing childhoods growing up,
Right.
And now we're in positions where we have the ability to make an influence. Like for me personally, that's one of the big things is like we're seeing huge nature loss and we're seeing huge nature connection loss. And so how do we make sure that the next generation doesn't continue to have that? And how do we make sure that we're protecting the places that are going to inspire the next generation of leaders to stand up and envision a new future, which we don't have right now. And so it's kind of TCA in a historical nutshell.
Yeah, that's super helpful, and I love that. And you're talking about, I think, something that's so powerful, right? Is giving business leaders. I think the Conservation Alliance gives business leaders the opportunity to advocate that they may have. You're busy running a business and you're looking for ways to protect what you love. And this is a way to plug in and say, okay, we're going to pay our dues. We're going to support protecting nature through conservation. And we're also going to be able to influence things on a policy level by advocating for conservation, which brings me to the next topic, which is, this is going to be loaded, totally loaded question. What's the latest with public lands? So let's just start there, and then I have some more specific questions about that. But I know y'all are very influential and involved in advocating for our public lands right now. So.
Yeah, not exactly a softball question.
Yeah.
Not fishing in a fully stocked trout pond right now with that question. I'm not a hyperbolic person, but I think we can just acknowledge that if you get into the details and see what has happened or what the message is of what's happened is, unfortunately, our public lands and waters are just seen right now as a resource to be extracted versus an asset to be protected. And so we're seeing a lot of actions through Congress for sure, but also the majority of the kind of the threats and the attacks towards our public lands are really coming through the administration, through unilateral decisions, which are largely coupled under the energy dominance executive order and agenda, right? So we're seeing a huge push to extract minerals, oil and gas, to open up timber, to fuel an economy, which, from my perspective, is a lot of those economies are dying. Like we're beyond coal right now, but now we're going after more coal. Like that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so it's just like it's a full-on attack on a lot of our most precious landscapes. And unfortunately, I think it's short-termism plagues those decisions. I think we've just got reactions from previous administrations and current. So it's like there's just kind of feelings which are caught up in there. And then there's, kind of what we call the economics behind the current state of play. But what we're trying to do with you and with others is to say, there is great hard economic number which shows a different future, right? Our great partners, Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, just came out with some numbers which say that directly on public lands, the outdoor economy generates, I think it's $128 billion of economic value every year. Like that's huge. It's like $350 million a day just from public lands. And so we're really trying to push that forward, and make sure we stave off the worst of what we're seeing come down the lines. But certainly iconic landscapes like boundary waters, we're very concerned about that. You're seeing a lot of national monuments coming under threat in the near future. Alaska, we've seen so much happening in Alaska, from the Ambler Road project being greenlit to oil leases back on the market. And then you've got big existential things like the Roadless Rule, which it impacts 60 million acres across the US. So yeah, when you ask me that question, it's like it's kind of hard to like even say what's happening, because it happens on every state, every place. Yeah,
I was like, yeah, this is going to be loaded, because it's like, yeah, wow, it's a lot to drink in. For the average person, it's like, what's happening? Like, so I know that the Conservation Alliance started Brands for Public Lands.
Mm-hmm.
Can you touch on that? And then I also want to touch in on the Roadless Rule tool, but let's start with Brands for Public Lands.
Yeah. So, back to what TCA does, right? When you think about a mutual front approach towards our work, we work on public lands. We work on defense and offense on public lands. We also work on private lands to say, hey, where can we increase access, increase connectivity of existing lands through private acquisition. And then we work a lot with tribal partners and tribal lands on restoration initiatives. So there's a lot of different things that we work on. But given the moment and given the topic we just talked about, was like what's happening with public lands, is we just saw a really, really urgent need to supercharge the business voice for public lands defense, to saying that we are going to potentially lose a lot if we don't get everyone at the table. And so we launched in March the Brands for Public Lands Coalition, which is meant to be any business who wants to engage in public lands defense. You can be a TCA member. You don't have to be a TCA member, but you want to get involved in this work. You want to get off the sidelines because you care about nature. Join us, join Brands for Public Lands, and we will point you in the direction of how to take action. And so it's been a really, really great tool for impact. I think we started with 55, 60 brands, and I think we're over 165 now. So in a few months, we've tripled in size. Over $20 billion worth of annual revenue from those brands. And so it's become like this amazing tool to kind of go to decision makers and say, hey, there are a lot of businesses, there are 60,000 employees from these businesses and all their customers that really want to care about and protect our public lands for their kids and their kids' kids. And so we've been mobilizing that community pretty significantly. On a lot of big issues, right? Certainly it's hard to, there's fatigue out there for sure, because there's so many things. So we tried to say, hey, these are the biggest issues where this coalition is going to go forward and where we're going to dig in. And it's been great to see the impact.
Yeah. It's empowering though, and there's strength in numbers. And I think that demonstrates it, right? There's, you go from 50 to you triple the number of brands who support this, and then they have a conduit into advocating and advocacy, and it's really powerful. So I'm psyched to be a part of that, a very small part of that. But it's if your brand or your company benefits in any way from public lands, like you should think about joining, right? I mean, it makes sense. But so anyway,
it's like we would say it's like a big tent approach, right? It's like there's power in numbers. There's leverage in numbers. Like, our merger strategies is part of that, along with Rivian, who's a $1 billion company, right? But you're in that same ecosystem. And so you as a smaller brand, not saying that you're not a $5 billion company right now, Rick, but
working on that.
That's my plug to join in enlist Rick at Emerger Strategies.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But like you're in the same room, right? You're in the
Yeah.
same power. And so for smaller brands, you can leverage this ecosystem. And so it's a big tent. There's also safety in numbers too. And what we found too is that, there's reticence to going out on your own right now, especially pushing back against administration. We know tariffs are a big thing. We know a lot of other things. And so this big coalition, it's kind of hard to pick apart 160 brands and pick one off at a time. So we're going forward and we're saying we represent politically a wide variety of constituents in there. We're going to come together over what we think is a very unifying topic, which is, conservation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so within this sort of umbrella of public lands that are wanting to be used for extraction instead of recreation, and there's the rescinding of the roadless rule. For folks who maybe have not heard of that and they're going, well, all public lands were just public lands. Yeah. What is the roadless rule, and why is that so critical for conservation and our public lands?
Yeah, for sure. Good question. So brief history is in 2001, the Roadless Rule was put into place, which essentially says it's applied to 60 million acres of national forest across the U.S., which essentially says, hey, these specific areas of national forests, which are called inventory roadless areas, you can't build roads on them. These are areas which have, great biodiversity impacts. They've got climate mitigation. They've got recreation, all these other tribal values. We should not be putting roads on there. And the thing is, like, the roads weren't necessarily the issue, but roads, you need a road to build a mine. You need a road to have a logging operation. And so the intention was to say, these are some of the most iconic national forests, most intact landscapes. Let's protect them for generations to come. And so they put the policy in place 25 years ago to say these 60 million acres shouldn't be touched, and they should be open for recreation and sustainable use. Recently, Secretary of Interior Brooke Rollins indicated her intention to roll back that rule, to say we're going to pull it back and we're going to open up these places to roads again. Which, this has actually been one of the most celebrated conservation policies we've ever seen. It's also been a pretty bipartisan and very appreciated across the aisle. Say, yeah, these are amazing landscapes. And sure, there's probably some nuances in the regulation you might need to change just for fire mitigation and everything like that. But there's no sense in throwing everything out the door just because you don't like a part of it. And so we've seen the intention to roll this back. It impacts about 45 million acres of those 60 million acres that could be, threatened now and opened up to extraction. And for your community on the fishing side of things, like, there's a ton of rivers that would be impacted in their entirety or the headwaters of them. I think everything from the Taylor River to the Snake River, a lot of amazing blue ribbon fishing rivers that would be impacted if this goes back. So we've been adamant about saying, hey, this is an existential issue to not just forests, but to tribes, to anglers, to trail runners. There's 25,000 miles of trail which are on these places, to businesses, to gateway communities who have assumed that these landscapes were going to be protected forever, and they built coffee shops, outfitters, everything on their backbone. And so we've been really adamant about pushing back against this rollback. And part of the messaging is not just, hey, this is conservation thing we're pushing against, but it's also about business and community continuity, right? You can't, if you continue to ping pong these regulations from left to right, you can't build a business. Again, how are you going to build an economy on this if this continues to adjust? So that's a big issue that we've been really focused in on.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, like in addition to all of that, like just knowing that there are places that you can go to hunt or fish or trail run or hike or camp that you cannot get to with a vehicle, like and that are pristine and relatively untouched, right? It's there's just power and knowing that that still exists in America.
Yeah.
And just saying like, wow, like I know that I could, if I really want to get off the beaten path, I still can. Like there's still adventure out there to be had. And this, I think that, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier by this, short term thinking and the short termism of like, okay, well, yeah, but like, what is the, if we don't take a long term view of all this, like, what are we going to do? To slice everything up and put a road through everything, and that's it? Like, it just doesn't make any, it doesn't make any sense. So there's that component of it. Then there's the component of, nature, the value of nature and conservation for me personally is, on a spiritual level and on the healing power of nature, and spending time in nature is good and for everyone. And I think most people who recreate in the outdoors understand that that's a big draw. But then you just also have the protecting biodiversity and the fact that wilderness and conservation of these areas are a climate lever also I mean, they're sequestering CO2 and they're protecting biodiversity. Like we need these places. So it's unbelievable to me that this is back on the table to put a road through it. It's just, it's disheartening, but luckily Conservation Alliance is here to help. So excited about that. But you mentioned something earlier about the Snake River, and I am, I was lucky to live out in Jackson Hole for a few years and trout bum around there, and did a lot of fishing in Wyoming and Idaho. And I know that y'all have some work related to the dams on the Snake River. Can we touch on that for a bit?
Yeah, for sure. So this is one of those things. So in the lower Snake basin, there's 4 huge hydroelectric dams, which they've studied the salmon populations above those dams pre and prior, and obviously for the story well, but like you've seen the steady decline of salmon up in that area, and I think that was one of the initial impetus for when I worked at Patagonia. Snake River dam removal was one of our big things under the damnation kind of campaign. But and I think it's one of those things, like you think like, how are we going to ever take down 4 huge dams? But it's one of those topics that for me is it's a long-term play. This is not a short-term thing. It's a long-term play that what we've seen is amazing traction up in the Northwest to just have a conversation and to say, you know what, maybe the initial foray came into this idea of removing these dams because of salmon, but there's a lot of other interests involved in the topic. There's agriculture, there's different types of recreation, there's energy, there's economies, which all rely on that ecosystem. And so the efforts to kind of take down the dams and very fish focus initially have actually progressed into a really cool place where that under the Biden administration, they call the 6 sovereigns. So it's Oregon, Washington, and then the 4 key tribes up there, put together the Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative, which was saying, hey, we all collectively think about a new future for our area. But we're not just going to take a sledgehammer to the past or what we currently exist right now, because we know there's a lot of interests, but let's commit to envisioning a new future where if we were to take down the dams, can we make sure we have enough energy in the area? Can we ensure economies who have been built on maybe still water recreation still have a future? Can we think about how we're addressing farms? Can we think about the native communities up there? And so we got really excited about this from an ecological perspective, but I also feel like it was a really cool example of people coming to the table and say, let's pull everyone in here. Let's not have conservation be a left or right issue, but let's think about the future of this region. And so we were super supportive and engaged in that. Unfortunately, the Trump administration pulled themselves out of that initiative, which was a huge setback. But we're here. We think this is a long-term win and could be actually transformative for the ecology up there, but also for those communities. And so working on that area to think about, the long-term dam removal and restoration of the whole watershed.
Yeah, and it just is to provide a success story. I mean, there's salmon now from the removal of the Klamath dams, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's like starting to happen.
Yeah, that is one of the coolest. I mean, if we're looking, a lot of what I've talked about, unfortunately, has been a bit of a downer today. But if you want to look at one of the coolest, most inspiring stories, dig into the Klamath Dam removal, right? Because they ripped those dams out. There's fish upstream that they haven't seen, and they also, I don't know if you saw the New York Times article, but the first descent of the whole lower Klamath in over 100 years was made by this group of indigenous youth, and it's the coolest story ever, right? When
I haven't seen that.
Bringing recreation back, they're bringing the tribes back, they're bringing fish back, and that's what we need to point to, right? We need to talk about a new future. We can't just be stuck in a yes/no current existence, but we need to paint that picture. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, I saw that. It was just like, it's one of those things. I think, myself included, I had some questions. It's like, all right, well, I really hope that works the way we think it will, and it did. It's yes. But you don't know. It's a wild fish. Are they going to remember? To go there, and they did, which is unreal.
Totally, man. Yeah, nature is so resilient. To an extent, though, we can't totally chop it up.
Well, I think that's I just see I think that any business, or even if you're a business owner or you work for a company that's not in outdoor recreation, you hunt or you fish or whatever it is, you like to go camp with your family, you go on vacation and go see national parks, whatever. It's what makes America so special and unique. Like I was actually rewatching Ken Burns' The National Parks recently, and which is just so good. But they were like, comparing, like I think we lose the historical perspective of, like, consider that when America was discovered, and this is not a discussion about what we did to Native people, but just more of like, here was an entire land that was undeveloped, where like the most valuable things in Europe were cathedrals, and like we had natural cathedrals. And it's like, that's so worth protecting in perpetuity. It's, I don't know, I think it's one of the most important things that any business can do is to get involved with conservation and protect any and all land that you can, because protecting nature provides a return on investment that's immeasurable in the best way.
Totally. Yep. People all over the world come to the United States to go visit our national parks or wilderness or whatever, and we take it for granted, right? You go, like you mentioned, that you go to Europe, great hiking and everything, but you're walking through people's backyards and everything. And like, we have these amazing resources that, Ken Burns, it's like America's greatest idea, right? And we don't realize what we have until it's gone, and we just cannot we can't let these things disappear from not on our watch, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the So the Conservation Alliance, like for anyone out there listening who one of the cool things that made it easy for me to be a Conservation Alliance member is that I'm also a 1% for the Planet member. And so the way that 1% for the Planet works is you donate 1% of your annual sales to approved environmental nonprofits. And through that, a portion of my 1% donation goes to my membership fee for 1% for the Planet. And then I can choose any number of nonprofits to support. Conservation Alliance is one of those. And what's really cool about that is that it's like it supercharges it, right? Because you're already going to donate 1% of your sales, but then you donate to Conservation Alliance, who then takes the money, and we get to vote on different grantees who we want to support as a member. And one of the grantees was even a local 4-acre plot here in on James Island in Charleston, which was I'll hang on, I got the name here somewhere.
The Battery Ireland Drive Neighborhood Association.
Yeah. Which I love. So it's even, it's like you're a part of not only protecting public lands and doing all these things that are meaningful, but it's also, in this case, something right in my backyard that got funded through Conservation Alliance, that got funded because I'm a 1% for the Planet member, which is just so cool to me.
Yeah. It's awesome to see like the force multiplier effect of especially 1% and TCA working together. And you get to have your hands on conservation in North America by being a member. You can not just direct where your funding goes, but you can dictate where the membership funding of Conservation Alliance overall goes every year in terms of nominating and voting on cool projects and bringing those to the table. And I think it's one of our superpowers is that it's almost like we have, even though there's only 8 staff at TCA, we've got 200 member companies and all their employees who crowdsource ideas, who crowdsource, connections. And then we can fund those. We can plug you into different ways to engage with them, host events. And so hopefully people see a real benefit to that membership and also the allocation of your 1% for the money, 1% for the Planet dues. So cool story about 1% and TCA is that we're both founded by Yvonne Chenard, who, talk about a badass who just like shaped the future of so much of our work and just the foresight to do that. So and Kate Williams and I work together, and they're jumping in on our advocacy efforts in a way they've never done before. So it's cool to see how we've kind of come together recently.
Yeah. Emerger Strategies would not exist without Yvonne Chenard, because that's just totally inspiring and so awesome. I actually I saw that Patagonia released their impact report. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that, but it was cool. There was a shout out to Brands for Public Lands and as part of their advocacy efforts, which was great. But that's really, really cool connection.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, I haven't read that yet, but I did see that it came out. Was it today?
I saw it today. I'm not sure when it came out, but it was pretty cool to see that as I was kind of scrolling through it, and I was like, oh, nice, Brands for Public Lands.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of go a little bit of some rapid fire, unless I missed something. Did we cover everything that I wanted to cover? Looking at my notes. I think so. All right. So let's let me go rapid fire, and I'm going to say, who is a conservation hero or mentor that inspired your career?
Yeah. Rick Ridgway. So Rick is great buddies with Yvonne Chenard, and he was on the first American expedition to Summit K2. So he's this amazing explorer, but he's my first boss at Patagonia, and he's just this legendary huge thinker, right? It's like there was nothing that ever told, no one who ever told Rick no from an idea perspective. And so, he's done everything. He helps so much of Patagonia's efforts. He's helped so many other things. And so he's just an amazing person who I just like hold so dearly in terms of what he's taught me in terms of thinking big, but also being able to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work. So yeah, that's the first person who comes to mind.
All right. What book, this is a little loaded, but what book, film, or podcast has most influenced your perspective on conservation?
The Sustainable Angler, of course.
No, but be serious.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. I think one that immediately comes to mind is Desert Solitaire, Edward Abbey. I mean, it's funny because we try to take a very non-polarizing perspective at TCA. I don't think Ed Abbey took that perspective, I mean, it just like, I think more than his politics, he just found deep connection to landscapes and just like, that just fueled him forwards, right? He's like, I only act because I'm sitting there like crawling on the ground of Moab, of Arches National Park. And that's what inspires me, the dirt under my fingers and everything. And so I think that's always a good reminder because we can get so bogged down in the policy and everything, but sometimes you just got to go outside and smell some dirt, hug a tree, run, fish, whatever. And so Ed Abbey, like I think, yeah, hands down, one of the most influential authors.
All right. What is one lesson the outdoors have taught you that you carry into your work?
Yeah. That's a good question, man. These are great questions, man. Resilience. Yeah. Resilience. I think you look at ecosystems, whether it be post-fire or other, issue or even just natural occurrences, and you see how nature is so resilient, right? The flora, the fauna, everything like that. And I think we just have to have that little grit and mentality right now, which I try to bring into my work right now. Because I mean, be honest with you, like it's hard. Like it's hard working in conservation right now. And if we don't kind of like think about how we're going to rebuild after where we are now, we're going to be stuck in the same place right now. So I think always just having that kind of like, what's the next iteration? What does the resiliency look like in a couple of years from now? So,
yep. Yeah, I love that. Let's see. If you could get every outdoor brand in America, okay, to take one sustainability or conservation action tomorrow, what would it be?
Join the Conservation Alliance.
Oh, right? yes. Of course. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. I will say I'll zoom back from that one. I think every brand, every outdoor brand, every company needs to have a nature strategy, right? We've seen climate strategy, we've seen circularity strategy. Everyone has to have a nature strategy as part of their core business. And so I think that is absolutely critical in thinking through how your own operations interact with ecosystems, but then also how your external facing advocacy grants, everything, how that all comes together, put together a nature strategy and stick to it.
Yeah, I think that's so important, especially as human population grows. We've got to be way more strategic with how we're protecting our land and waters. So I think that's a really good one. Okay, let's see. What gives you the most hope for the future of conservation?
Yeah. My kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that probably sounds cliche, but it's what pulls me forward. Not just in terms of what I'm working for, but I think the next generation, they're going to be the ones who innovate. They're going to be the ones who stick to their morals, who actually going to pull us to get forward in the right way. I mean, obviously I have a bias towards how I talk to my kids about my work, and, my little 4-year-old, she thinks I save trees, and that's where we keep it. But kind of a cool story, which gave me so much hope, is that at the end of our road, we kind of live in, unincorporated Colorado. And at the end of our road, there's a horse pasture. And fortunately, they sold it off to a developer. And so there's one of those yellow signs that's, says like public hearing about X, Y, and Z. And my 4-year-old asked me, what does that say? I said, well, they're going to put some houses up here. And she was super disturbed. Like, well, what about the horses? And I was like, yeah, I know it's a bummer, isn't it? So, well, we should just write on that sign, no houses, horses only. I was like, hell yeah, we should be doing that right now. And it's like, I think that's what gives me a lot of hope, is I do think, I think there's going to be innovation. I think there's going to be so much passion that comes out in the next generation. And it's up to you and I and so many other parents out there to instill that and pull that forward.
Yeah, love it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, where can folks who hopefully listen to this that are anglers and they want to join the Conservation Alliance because they realize that their hunting, their fishing, our future is dependent on protecting nature, where can they go to get more information and join? Yeah.
Go to our website, Conservation Alliance. Follow us on any of the socials. And you can also Google Brands for Public Lands, or follow an URL. We could probably put in the show notes afterwards. Yeah. Go there if you just want to get involved right now. I know that finances are hard for a lot of companies right now. So if you just want to get involved, you want to do something, join Brands for Public Lands. We'll take you. And yeah, hope to see more people engage and doing all the great work that you're doing too, Rick. So thank you.
Yeah, well, on a personal note, Paul, thank you so much for everything that you do and everything that the Conservation Alliance is doing. And thanks for making it easy for us to, the little guys, I would say, like me, to get involved and feel like I'm part of it. And it's empowering. So I would just say a message out there to, even if you're a small business like me, this is a way to get a megaphone for your voice and protect what you love. So highly encourage you to join the Conservation Alliance.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Thanks for having me here today. This is awesome. This is super fun.
All right. Well, special thanks to Paul for everything he does to protect what he loves, and to everyone at the Conservation Alliance for defending public lands and protecting nature through conservation. If you are a business owner who loves America's public lands, believes in supporting conservation, and wants to leave a lasting legacy for your business, I would strongly encourage you to consider joining 1% for the Planet and making the Conservation Alliance one of your environmental nonprofit partners. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to head over to emergerstrategies.com for all of your sustainability consulting needs, and check out our new nature strategy and science-based targets for nature services. Have a good one.